We did that.
And so many words.
I call us back to order and please eat. Feel free. I'm gonna be eating. I'll try not to eat my mouth full or speak with my mouth full. I mean. So the discussion that we want to have now is on team committee structure. Presently on the board, you see that we have board development, communications, and then strategic partnerships has merged with communications because we did not have a chair. We got foundations of service and grants, process and program oversight. I've been thinking a lot about this and I've had this conversation with a few people. One suggestion was made, and this is not, something I'm bringing forward to say this is what we need to do, but I'm sharing, an idea that came from someone who's not here today. Keeping the structure the way we have it, but possibly asking 2 members of each committee or team to serve on grants as needed. Because it's such an important job to be on the grants committee with the amount of money that they're looking at and deciphering where to go and the different application process and how to read through those applications and where that goes from there. But the idea was that we take 2 from communications, board development, strategic partnerships, and foundations of service, and those combined come into the grants group as needed to look at the grants and bring anything that needs to be voted to the full commission. The other idea was that everybody gets a coin, and we put 4 quadrants on the floor, and we toss the coins up, and wherever your name lands, in whatever quadrant your name lands, that's where you serve. Now, I know that's not what everybody wants, because we all want to serve in different areas because of where we're skilled. We feel our skill set is. But we really do need to talk about, number one, do we want to keep it committee or team structure? Do we need to have a set number of people for each team committee? Or do we want to say, look, I'm really interested in, volunteers and how I can support that goal. But I also want to work with, maximizing our brand or who we are as a commission and developing commissioners and their skills. So that's the conversation that we want to have. What are your ideas on the current structure? What are your ideas on what it looks like now that we have these 4 goals that we devise these outcomes for? And Candace, do you ever do that?
I do. I have
Please.
I just have a quick clarifying question.
Yes.
I know that communications and strategic partnerships came together, but are they going to stay together, or is it going to go back to the structure that I see here with communications, strategic partnership?
That's a good question. That's something for us to decide.
Oh, okay.
We're completely open. We think that this is a really good time to start talking about restructuring our teams, our committees, or whatever we want to call it.
I think one thing we had talked about earlier, maybe a year ago, I don't know exactly when, somebody can say, and we can, I'm going by memory, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But I think one thing we discussed, we did not come to any decision, was that maybe we were going to try to look at the different priorities that we set in the state plan framework and see if we could determine if certain of the teams fit some of those better than others. And so if they were, instead of trying to have every team work on every goal all the time, or there's some that were heavily weighted to a certain team or not, and if so, do we want to try to align the two? And we didn't, as I said, I think we discussed it. I don't think we ever made a decision about it. We just talked about it.
Well, interestingly enough, I feel as if we did that, this would still end up the same. Maybe, right? Like we just talked about, we need to work on board development. We need to work with communication and partnerships. We need to work on, so I feel like. Oh. And that's where we're coming to the problem. But from the two ideas that you have given, Terry, what fits the best with me at the moment is having like ad hoc committee members, I guess we could say, who represent each of their areas, right? So think of more like you represent your committee on the grants board. Right, so like you have someone from strategic partnerships, communication, come in. And maybe it could be, if we think about like the board of succession mindset, right? Someone's gonna have to be a chair. We had a lot of problems this year, people trying to be chairs. Maybe we can get people who are potentially interested in being chairs to have that as like their leadership development part, like you'll step in for an ad hoc committee member on grants. And this would be kind of like the mentor, the shadowing of like, this is what a chair would do. Chair did. Yeah, chair would feel the same way. The commissioner sends someone to represent them on this commission. You know, maybe,
And if you do that, I'll do that.
yeah, like you just
Yes,
step in.
because that's logical. That's a logical step of
Yeah.
succession.
So you know you're doing this work because it's going to lead to you really understanding how you can fulfill your role as chair.
So kind of like a vice chair.
Yeah. And if you don't want to call it that, you don't have to put a title, like
Yeah.
sometimes commitment is a big word for some, you know, it's sure learning.
Lizzie, you got your hand up? Yes.
Thank you. I just didn't want to put pressure on people, you know, when you put titles on things, that may not sit well with people, so whatever works for everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something we mentioned during grant committee, and we did chat about like the potential of people serving on multiple committees, and I'm not against that. But there's a lot of work to be done during grant committee, and it's an all year round process, so it's not like folks can really just jump in. Right, so, you know, if there were to be ad hoc members, we want to make sure that that's the problem we're facing right now, is we even have members that don't show all the time, and then we can't vote, and twice this year, we've had to pass votes to the full commission instead of being able to vote on them as a grants committee. So, you know, whatever we do, we have to make sure that it's consistent for both people.
Okay.
But there's, when you're on grants, I mean, the reason why I joined grants after being on board development for 8 years, more, was that I was just ready for something new and I wanted to do something that I really didn't know anything about. That, you know, I really have to learn. And you know, up until that time, I was always pretty clueless when we had the full board vote on the allocation of formula funding and all that. I don't have that mathematical background. And, you know, so what happened then was that there were two members who had been on the board for a long time, who were on grants, who really knew grants really well. And they left. Both of them left. And so I was kind of like the last woman standing. Okay, sure. I'll leave grants. But what I'm trying to say is that if, you know, like jumping in and out of grants doesn't really work. Because there's just a lot of knowledge and understanding that you have to acquire to be able to really make thoughtful decisions. And so I would really advocate for, you know, as permanent as anything is.
So then to me, hearing that knowledge, and no disrespect, I would just, whoever you put on the board next, if they want to have interest in grants, because that to me, because it seems as if you ask us when we sign up for committee, what are we interested in? It's, you know what I mean? So like, to me, that would be a board development next step is like, whoever our next members are, they need to be interested in working on this grant committee, because I mean, frankly, people are not on grants committee because that's not their interest. So do you want someone who's on the grant committee who's still probably not interested in being on grant committee? Because then are they gonna show up at meetings, you know?
Invest in the work that's being done. And the other thing that I was gonna recommend too is that, you know, as we're looking at for board development, we're looking for new members to come on, is to look at the skill set, and even those who have this coming in that may be appointed, looking at their skill set and maybe letting the department know that, hey, this skill set that we're looking for, can you send someone that's gonna fall in line with these, these outlined, what our needs are, in that space, and instead of pulling someone, because I was thinking about it, but I do love foundation service, just to be honest. But I can do but it does require a lot of work. So I do United Way right now, and it takes up a lot of time, especially if you want to be able to do the job right and know that you're putting the funds out and make sure all the things are happening there. So I love the idea of having someone from each committee be a part of the grants. I don't think they're gonna be able to devote time or have the capacity to do that.
Okay, Lizzie, and then Katie has her hand up here. So Lizzie,
Oh, no, I forgot that one.
I'm
are
sorry.
you sure?
No, it's all good.
Okay, Katie.
Yeah, my question was, and I think I just got an answer for some of it, was on that grants committee, are those meetings in person or virtual?
They're virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, all of the committees are meeting virtually, at least once a quarter.
And then what about the grants committee? Does it meet only once a quarter? It sounds like it meets more frequently than that.
We meet once a quarter, unless there's something very pressing that happens, and we need to have an extra discussion to prepare for a full board meeting. We'll have another,
Mhm.
but the regular schedule is once.
And then you've spoken about the amount of work that's on that committee. Is there a way that potentially that work could be divided into some subcommittees so that that is alleviated a bit for people? Or is it something that, I mean, right now you only had 3, but if you had more members on that committee, would it make sense to divide it into subcommittees of some nature?
I'm not going to tell you, this is gonna be.
I mean, I know we've talked about, like, it's a big responsibility grant, and that is where like the majority of our funding is. But the truth is, in terms of responsibility, Jim does all the financial components on the back end. And grant committee is a little bit more big picture, and so when folks say like, oh, I'm not sure, like, whether or not, like, they might not be interested in, that's hard for me to believe, because you're all here in the room for Volunteer Tennessee, and the majority of what we do is, you know, support our programs. And, you know, even on here, it's program oversight, it's not just grants process. So, you know, the staff takes a lot of that nitty-gritty detail. We need folks to show up more for that big picture process.
And I guess that's why.
Okay. Well, sorry. So it sounds like there wouldn't really be a need for subcommittee, but with just 3 people on committee, it turns out to be a lot. Is that correct? Would you say?
It's not even the workload, it's that we don't have enough to vote on anything because people don't attend the meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when I signed up to be on strategic partnerships, I was definitely interested in that committee, particularly because of my role as a community development director, but I'm retired now, so it doesn't, I mean, that aspect is kind of like something that I still get to experience a little bit, but it's not like my main job or focus. So I would be willing to move over to grants to
Thank
be a
you.
board person.
Thank you, that would
Thank
be
you.
wonderful.
Lizzie, could you describe what the responsibilities are? Like, what is the process with those type of reviews? I've reviewed state grants for Oregon, Ohio, I know that I've done like the community review work a little bit. What is the piece that the board members do?
Yeah,
Sorry, before you answer that, Adam, sorry, now that you have your mouth, Adam had his hand up earlier.
I was just gonna, sorry, apologies. I was gonna echo. I think the value add, and this kind of does piggyback off where you're going. The staff, Lizzie and Jim, put together several recommendations for us on various funding initiatives that we can do, kind of the art of the possible, if you will. I think the value is where we ask questions and get their feedback, and why did this program not reapply this year, or they're in this bucket this year? So it's more or less the dialogue with the staff, and it's coming with an inclusive mind, I think, on how did we arrive here and understanding the various proposals that they put together, and then landing somewhere on a recommendation to then bring to this board.
And something that we had in our action plan over the last couple of years was that at least one person on grants would volunteer to review the grant. You know, volunteer to review grants when it's time for a grant review cycle. And I would really like to see everybody on grants do that. Because I think it helps put the numbers into perspective in a lot of ways. And, you know, you develop an understanding of why, wow, this sounds like a really great program. But they're not answering the questions, or they left a lot of material out, or I could see that they were cutting and pasting from last year's application. And you end up having to give a program that has really great potential a low score. And so it helps you understand when we're looking at the spreadsheets and numbers. It's like, well, why couldn't we find this? And so I think, you know, it probably takes a year on grants, go through the whole cycle to really understand what, you know, all the pieces. And I think it helps you be a better board member for when we have to take those votes.
what would the ideal number be for that?
4 or 5, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take the number of commission members, and there's roughly 35-ish, because counting the appointed and the ex officio, and there's 5 committees. So if it were evenly distributed, you'd have roughly 7 on each committee. But that doesn't have to be completely evenly distributed, but 3 is not enough.
No.
Really, and especially, recently, you know, Adam was on leave and Lee wasn't able to make the last call, so it was just Eileen. And it makes it kind of hard when you have less than about 4 or 5 on a committee.
Just the way the committee is set up in a way, because I mean, you have to like, what comes to mind is data storytelling. Can people easily look at the data that's provided them and understand what's going on? Because a lot of times, it makes you a little like, it gets frustrating. And so I'm wondering if there's a better way to, I don't know, if you present it or if you need to restructure it or what it would be, but like to make it more appealing to other people. Like, even if you've never done this a day in your life, we can make it like data storytelling 101. This is how grants fit into the process. And if you start to see from beginning to end, because I very much love the behind the scenes thing. I love being a part of the process, all that. You then see how it matters. And you then see how it actually fits into everything. And you can understand what you're looking at better. I don't know what would be the thing about that or how you would change it, but I'm wondering if that's part of it.
Anna,
I was gonna say, Lizzie, not speaking for you, I think that's kind of what you're getting back to, like, if you're not saying that grants underpin a large portion of what we do, and not all of what we do, then that's a bit problematic. But I think, again, maybe it's the name that is intimidating people. We're not doing a grant, right? We're not, to Eileen's point, we're not even scoring, like, we're reviewing the funding mix. Sorry, yes, sorry. But like, we're reviewing the funding mix primarily that staff has developed and recommended in terms of what we can get through with our funding. And again, asking questions and trying to make what's best for all of the applicants that we can, that did score well.
And we're not coming in with the funding either. We're voting on options that Jim already put together, so the finances are handled by staff.
I know what just threw me off was because we also started with, no, we can't have ad hoc committee because it requires so much work. And so then it's like, we requires work, and then you're like, actually, it doesn't require that much work, like, we just need you. So I think that's like where the confusion lies, is because we truly just said two different statements, like, I understand now, like, oh, I'm not really reviewing everyone's grant and saying like, they deserve this, they don't deserve this, here's the metrics, here's that. Because what I'm hearing is honestly, it probably takes more work to do foundation of service when we do those awards, and we have to read them and go through and look at the matrix, like. So to me, I think hearing it explained on a different level is what needs to be acknowledged. Like, now I understand, like, it's not minimizing the work that you're doing, but it's not a full-time job to be on your committee. And so, and I think everyone fully does understand that grants is what keeps us around. I think what we did not understand is the roles and responsibilities that she played in that, because when I read grants, the sheer accountability, developability to address market values, I don't.
Exactly.
I hear market values and I think stock market and things above my head. Does that make sense? So no disrespect to y'all committee, I just fully didn't know what it was, and then hearing that it takes a lot of work, count me out.
I think it's consistency.
That's what you need, you need consistency. You need people to show up and do the job.
Betty,
One thing that I think,
Oh,
I'm guessing, yeah,
oh, sorry. Just, Kim, posted that she's been running grant committees for years and she'd be happy to switch.
that's two.
but still, I think the grants committee, or someone, I don't know if it's the grants committee, see, I don't even know what the job is either. I know the word scares me too, so, but I've just changed committees to one that I guess is right now, other community grants, but you ask the grants committee for someone, staff, Jim, whoever, asks everyone to review grants for the year. Like, it's not the grant committee doing it. All of us have been asked to score, to look at grants and to do that. And I do think that that's a responsibility of all commissioners. But along that line, I would like a little guidance and training, because I know that when I have done it, as with any rubric scoring or whatever, some people's scores they score high and some score low. I know that's the reason for an average or a middle, but still, I think some idea kind of what it means to do a one would be helpful.
I've done a grant review many times since I've been on the board. I have trouble with it.
And I think
I always think of my main two title, my main two.
Well, now let us know with the AOE, we have the same, we have the same thing. You've got it and kind of talk about what, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe.
I was just gonna say, I hate to do this to our committee, but I would also be willing to move to the grant. I've served on foundations of service since I've started with the convention, so I'd be willing to switch, and then
Okay,
I think the conversation is done.
So we've had 3 volunteers. Thank you.
Now we have 6, and there we go.
All right, so now, that's perfect. We're good. So the question to the group now is, do we want to keep these 5 team committees and work on our goals and see where we fit once the staff has brought these goals into their wordsmithing session? and put some outputs that are a little bit more, that are measurable? Then do we want to come together as committee teams and say, here's where we fit, here's our part? Or do we want to assign each goal to a certain committee?
I like the idea of assigning a role.
Okay,
Can I throw a caveat in there? I think committees should be assigned on what they can impact. So it may be that one committee is assigned to 2 goals, another committee is assigned to 1 goal, because that's what so I think it's gonna be very dependent on what that committee is doing, and that's how it should be assigned. So I don't think it would just necessarily be 1 goal, but it's where can your committee impact that goal for the service plan? So it's not necessarily that we're doing them all. Some of us may, because of what your work is, but it's
probably foundations of service.
yes, you're tailoring it to what makes sense. Because I think right now, the way we've done it historically is you're doing a goal for all of them. And I know with foundation of service, we've even struggled with some of them because it's like, how do we really partake in this? So I think that will help streamline that. I personally.
Another thought is with a focus on the things that Volunteer Tennessee actually does, we all will effectively be working on those things. With the way the strategic plan is coming together, you know, there's a focus on volunteers, organizations, partnerships, awareness, and internal capacity, which is 4. When we look at what's up there, that's almost like these are communications as your awareness piece, strategic partnerships as your organizations. Foundations could be the basis of a member volunteer. And you combine board and grants as internal capacity, and you just realign them so that they directly mirror those focuses. And those entities can focus on those particular pieces of the collective events, but then we come together around those collective events. We distribute like, okay, so, you know, we talked about how like the volunteer piece of the GDSA and the partnership piece of that, and the messaging part of that, and then the internal capacity to deliver on that. In some ways, I think it might be worthwhile to consider restructuring these so that they directly line up with those focus areas. Just so that there's something, and be like a 1-for-1. If a person was coming in here and was like, do you want to be on the Foundations Service Committee or Communications Committee? You could also ask a person, you know, are you interested in working on the volunteer experience or the AmeriCorps experience? Like what it's like to get members? Or are you interested in how the organizations that support these members are them? Are you interested in the storytelling and like the messaging, or are you interested in capacity building for like the commission itself?
So Kim says, please assign goals to committees. When a goal belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one.
I was just thinking, you have to have a goal owner.
So I like what Jason said, because I think if we assign or we decide which goal goes with which team or committee, whatever we decide to use, then as we go through the outputs, it may be that different teams work on those outputs together or separately. I mean, that's how we've always done it. Like communications will look at different phases and different outputs and say, that's the communications. But, okay, go ahead.
And then that then leads to, can we focus on, so we have a 2-year plan. 3 years, whatever, 3 years, 6, 7, 3 years. But yearly, we go back and reassign. So like 1 year, supporting a remote network of volunteers and service learning could be foundation of service. And then we do our work and get out of the way. Or year 2, another committee can now come in and do their play on what they need to do. And just passing the baton year by year, or it could be all 3 years, it ends up being the foundation of service, just what that looks like. But I think that also might be easier to digest, knowing that yearly, since we should be looking at our plan yearly, we could change who owns the committee.
Yeah.
But the goal is to complete your work, your output.
Yes.
So when you're creating the goal, when you complete this fiscal year,
Yes.
I don't know if that the
That,
mindset.
I think that's, I mean, I know I've been on communication since I've joined the commission. And when we do that big spreadsheet, you know, the CC is throughout because it is communicating what's going on within our organization. And that's grants, that's the GBSA, that's the conference, that's, you know, everything that goes on. So that makes sense. And I think, Jason, you already said you see how they fit together, right?
Yeah, I think what I was saying was just like, just tweaking these, so
Uh-huh.
they mirror the new structure,
Mhm.
and then the goals that are aligned will be the ones that line up with them. And then, you know, we have a distinct focus on like, are you working on the members or volunteers of the organization? And that might also create opportunity where a person might spend the year on like the committee focused on volunteers and they, when working, so the outputs that they'd be working on would be the ones for their GBSA that's oriented around volunteers, but then the next year they could move over to the group that's focused on organizations. And they would again have the opportunity to work on GBSA, but they would be working on the outputs tied to partnership, organization, capacity. I don't know if I'm like, basically, I'm advocating for a minor reconciliation of these committees. Basically, we just lose one by combining board development and grants as like an internal committee, and then naming them based on the structure of the state plan, and then the outcome that is the responsible outcome is the one that corresponds to the committee that you're on. And then looking at the outputs, you would just be looking at the activities of the staff, and then you would be doing that, the outputs that correspond to the focus of your, so, you know, communications would be awareness, right? Like,
Now, sorry.
Who's talking?
It was Betty and I were talking over each other.
I was just gonna respond to what he said for you, if you want.
Go ahead,
You wanna
go ahead.
But I question whether board development and grants, I mean, they're internal, but they're very different. And so it's like, oh, do we need 10 people on a committee? For 5 of them talking about this and 5 of them talking about this, so then is that gonna be like, oh, these are internal structure, but we're just gonna make them 2 subcommittees? Or do we wanna just keep them separate?
Well, I think given that we have 3 people who volunteered
Right, there are enough people.
to be on grants, if we merge with board development, then we'll be the biggest committee by far.
Well, but then also, it's like, it takes double the time to do
Yeah.
the ta- I mean, I see, I'm guessing, but I see board of development's gonna have a lot. And so it's like, do you wanna also, do we wanna take my grants too? I don't know, right? I mean, to me, it just sounds like all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, I agreed to move to this committee, but now I'm gonna go.
I'm very good with talent before.
Oh, we're pals.
Chairs, I mean, we've been working, like each chair of the committee have been working to realign what our committee does anyway. So I actually don't think that there's going to be a problem having these proposed outcomes aligned to the committee, because that's, we started from this year, like we revamped the way we were thinking. So I don't think there needs to be a change on committee, maybe what the descriptions of it are, be really helpful. That was what we talked about as committee chairs, is like, we need to figure out what our description is and what our role is and what our lane is and stay in our lanes. That could be a change that we make, and I think once we make that change in the description of our committee, they then will align with these proposed outcomes that we have. And there won't need to be a big change that needs to be made. It's just, we need to articulate better what we actually do, so we can know what's one lane we need to stay in.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing, and we're getting confirmation with the online folks as well, that we're going to make sure that one goal is assigned or the focus of one committee. And that as we're doing that, that committee is going to be looking at the outputs, and all of us will look at all outputs and see where we fit as a committee separately, or team. I don't know what we're going to use. Are we sold to teams? Are we sold to committees? I've heard,
I don't think that's really no down.
so, can I just say committee for now? And, okay, so with the committee work that's going on right now, if you can begin to look at those goals and see if you do feel like your committee aligns with the goals that we've talked about today, good. Then working on the description, the mission would be something your committee should talk about. And number two, and number three, or four, whatever I've got there. Start talking about not a vice chair, but a chair in training or a leadership, a chair-elect or a co-leader. And strategic partnerships, we're gonna have to work definitely with the board development to figure out where that goes. And find a chair. Because I can't imagine how Nathan's navigating strategic partnerships and communications with all this, with the roadshow and the partnerships and everything that's going on there. So I think that needs to be the focus of the committees.
To be co-chair or chair, like, you could actually have both. Or you have co-chair.
Yeah.
Depending on the committee, then you have the chair-elect for anybody for the next.
Yeah.
Or what people want, that prepared.
So, we're keeping it this way, right? We're just gonna change the description, definitely. Sure.
I think that's what we're saying. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. We're done.
One more thing I was gonna say was to avoid Eileen's situation in the future. If it does seem like it's imbalanced, it might be worth just having this like rebalancing conversation so that you
We don't even get started with our groups yet, like, we just hold off, like, somebody sign.
how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, having good conversations about what those responsibilities are, but also like, well, that's correct. Yes.
I just want to say thank you. I know that we did not reach our quorum today. We still don't have a quorum, but there are times when raindrops can be turned into blessings. And I think that our conversation here today has just been critical and important. I really do, because we've needed to talk about the state plan. We've needed to talk about our goals. We've needed to talk about committee structure, and a lot of times we don't have time. So I'm thankful that we've had this time today and we've come to some resolutions. We have 3 new committee members for the grant
Yes,
committee,
so
which is incredible.
go over their names.
Once it's written down.
I know, once it's written down.
And we had Katie go.
It's about to be
Kim
official.
Drake
Yeah.
and Jessica Young.
And Kim,
Kim Drake.
Kim.
Jessica Young.
Wait, also the person was Katie.
go for it, yeah.
And what we're also going to do is we want to go over the grant information so that we have that information. It looks like that we'll have to vote on this at a different time, but Jim would like for you, Lee, if it's okay to just go over that with us. And before we go, did you have something you wanted to
This
add?
is me just saying, it's not just grants committee that can work on their definition, like, articulate we do. Because in foundation service, we had a new member and they asked me and I said, I absolutely have no idea what we do and I'm the chair. Like, I don't know how we got here, what's the historical background on it. So that is like at least for my committee, we gotta work on that. It's down.
I
So,
think every committee should be doing that
Yeah.
now, in light of our new focus.
Yeah.
Those 4 focus areas.
We're kind of moving.
in a different direction, yes.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there, that was not a grant attack. I don't know what we do either.
Are there 4 committees now or 5?
There are 5 committees.
They're back to 5.
Yeah, we still have our grants committee.
Okay,
We just don't have a chair for strategic partnership.
got it.
Well,
That's the next step.
Gotcha.
and there will be time at the retreat in November for each committee to like have breakout meetings to talk about like, what's the revised mission going into the next 3-year period. So there's time to talk about that. And of course, committees can start that discussion now as you're having your quarterly committee meetings. But there will be time at the retreat to have those discussions as well.
Excellent.
So, Lizzie and I will organize a grants committee meeting off schedule. To do kind of an orientation, so that the really generous folks who have said they were joining grants, can ask all the questions they want. we can figure out where we're going.
Thank you, Autumn. Yeah, and I really, I want to give a kudos to Eileen. I mean, not only is she chair of the grants committee, is trying to do all this with the grants, but she's also the Friends of Volunteer chair. So you've been a superwoman. Thank you.
For sure.
Oh, and another thing, talking about succession plans. You know, we might want to build in a succession plan for the chairs of the committees as well, because there hasn't been one.
Could we, each committee, or are we talking about more development doing that?
Probably the committee.
Okay,
And then we
committees.
work with board
Within the
development to tell them
committee.
what it is that we're looking
Okay,
for.
so.
But they are hiring that they member.
Okay, so the committee definitely has some tasks at hand, and we have got to find a chair for strategic partnerships because they've got some tasks. Candace, did you have?
Template? Oh, I thought you were asking you to volunteer for. Oh. Yeah, be chair?
You'd be awesome.
No, thank you. That's what I was just asking him, because that's what I'm asking about the separation of, because I want to make sure each group has a staff support.
Okay,
And
Thank
if they're breaking up with the communications and strategic partnerships before we leave, I just like to know which group I can support so that we know to have the next.
we have not made an official breakup.
That's okay.
And I think probably it's important that we have that staff person on board. So we've got to strategize and just talk more about that. You know, and
I'm a
hopefully,
free floater right now, that's all,
Well, step one is we got to get a chair for that
for that committee.
committee. I mean, they can't be a breakup until there's someone
I mean,
here.
there's a lot of people on that committee.
Yeah, well,
Destiny, twist an arm. Pick one and twist.
Well, the thing is that a lot of those people represent the partner.
Yeah, that's,
So that
It is a
only
bit of a
leaves
challenge, yes.
Andrea and Jason. Because Kim and Katie have gone on to grants.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason I intentionally stepped back from leadership this year.
I understand, I'm not pushing on the program.
Refunded.
Listen. You ain't gotta tell me twice. I said no to chair five times.
Okay.
So.
I think that we ought
That's the
to,
story for
I think
another
I table that. I don't want anybody feeling comfortable. Because there's a little pressure when it comes to chairship. So, but we'll work on this together as a group. And let's move on. And if Eileen, if you could, do we need to, okay, here we go, right over here. We're looking at the AmeriCorps State Competitive Funding Chart. Would you like for Jim to get started on this?
I'd like for Jim to get started.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, sorry, it's a bit small. It's folks online, it's on that commission resource webpage. And if you'll hold on just a second, I'll put the exact link into the chat. It just may be easier to look at it on your screen rather than the small version that's being projected. And that's probably about as big as I can get it and still have all the information on. Bottom line is, when the commission met in May, I mentioned the national competitive process earlier. We did not have the results of the national competitive process. There were 13 of Volunteer Tennessee's existing being that they were previously funded programs. Now, a lot of these programs had been terminated by the AmeriCorps agency before the funding process, but 13 existing programs were sent to the competitive process. The far right, the ones that are shaded in gray, were not offered competitive funding. So you can see it was a majority of the programs weren't offered anything at all. City Year was offered full funding. Tennessee's City Year's at the top, number 2. Tennessee's Community Assistance Corporation, number 12. They were offered essentially full funding. It's a couple $100 difference from what they requested, but still essentially full funding. Martha O'Brien Center was offered full funding, but they are one of the programs, as we mentioned earlier, decided to close their AmeriCorps program and no longer operate an AmeriCorps program. So they have declined that funding. Memphis Teacher Residency is the program I mentioned earlier that was approved for full funding, but the funds have not been released yet. So they're in that weird status that we're trying to figure out some other way to help them. Relay Graduate School of Education was also offered full funding at $25,000, but they asked if they could stay in the formula portfolio. Teach for America Memphis was not offered any money, but they were offered all the members that they requested. And what that means from a program perspective is that the program has to come up with the money to support the program from non-federal sources. So they also asked if they could decline the competitive offer and stay in the formula. And that's on the chart that we'll show you in just a second. So that's the results of the competitive process. Overall, it was a good year for Tennessee in terms of the competitive process because there were 6 programs that were offered competitive funding. Well, one of them had $0 with it, but still. So it was pretty good, but only 2 are operational right now. And the third is waiting to get resolved. The other 2 are in the formula. So any questions about that?
I just real quick want to say, I think that reflects people's comfort with working with Volunteer Tennessee as opposed to directly with the AmeriCorps agency. We lost both our AmeriCorps Vista and State National grant. And the last time we had heard AmeriCorps was when they said, sent people home on. Then just a few weeks ago, when the grants were restored, they were like, cool, your grants are back. You want to bring your people back to keep doing Vista? Between that and that, none. Don't even talk to them. Volunteer Tennessee has been a consistent communication partner throughout this. I'm thankful to be funded, and I'm thankful to be funded through Volunteer Tennessee. I just don't have the confidence, not the agency itself, just what they're able to.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, if I could say something in response to that, I know it's taken a lot of work from not only the AmeriCorps directors, but also our staff to be able to do what you all have been able to do. And again, we all just thank you. I mean, yeah, it just bothers me. I feel very helpless in anything except writing, which I've done my share. But anyway, thank you all for all of your work and everything else. I know it takes a lot.
So that's the national competitive process. Typically, this is where we would do the conflict of interest, but I think because there's not a quorum, you all aren't going to be able to vote. So I think we can skip the conflict of interest. But if you had a conflict, I'll just ask that you not say anything during the next part to not color any future decisions. But as we move into this part, which is the fun part, as you can tell by all the colors, even though there's not a quorum, if anybody has any qualms or concerns about any of this, they should, as long as you don't have a conflict, make that known so that the executive committee can take that into consideration when it meets to make the official vote, because that essentially is what will have to happen. The executive committee will have to act on behalf of the full commission because there's not a quorum today.
Can you just give an explanation on why something could be considered high, medium, and low risk?
Yes. So this is the risk assessment that Neelam Gupta uses, and Neelam actually is out of town and is not able to be here, but she's our compliance director and she does the pre-award risk assessment. And so we ask each new applicant for, somebody's joining us. We ask each applicant, to submit a variety of financial information. So if they're audited, their most recent audit, their most recent, tax returns, a couple other things. And then Neelam reviews all of that, and she completes this rubric. The rubric itself is fairly simple. I think there's like 7 or 8 different questions, but they cover a lot of ground. So based on the information that they submit to Neelam, Neelam gives a score for each of these things on the rubric. And so, and it, based on the number of A's, B's, or C's they get, it produces the low, medium, or high. So each individual will have just one of those things. Is that?
Yeah, that's, I just wanted, like, there's 6 sections, you know, like, one of them's grantee policies and procedures, the other one is this. And we're looking at that to determine if someone's considered high risk, low risk, or RBD.
Yeah, well, it's the combination of all of the responses that then determine, where they are.
Let me specify, I just want everyone to see, like, including myself, exactly what it is that makes you, what are those rubrics areas, so we can know, like, is it high risk just because it's a bad program, you're asking for $1 billion, you know? But we know that it's different, so just to see that is helpful.
Yeah, it is more of a financial and internal operations assessment than an assessment of the proposed application.
If I may, from what we've looked at before, it's our risk of doing business with this grantee.
Right.
And what may come back on us, or what we might have to ask them and work through different audits.
Yeah. And so just because a potential grantee, the subrecipient has a medium or high risk, doesn't mean that they're gonna be a bad investment. It just means that this commission has to be, and the staff have to be careful when we're granting out money to the high and the medium. And even the low risk too. I mean, a low risk program with one change in a financial director can become a high risk. So, and we monitor all of the programs. We do an annual, this is for brand new applicants who've never received funding for us. On an annual basis, we also then do an annual risk assessment that helps us determine which programs we should monitor and the priority for how we monitor those programs. And every program, regardless of whether it's high, medium, or low, well, high gets monitored multiple years in a row. But if they're low, they get monitored at least once every 3 years. So we're looking at every program at least once every 3 years, regardless of what their risk score is.
I would just say that's pretty standard, I would say across state departments as well, so.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna, rather than trying to navigate this PDF, I'm going to instead use the spreadsheet because I can freeze panes and move around a little bit, although it's too big still. Oops, that's too small. Okay, that's small. Eileen, did you want me to talk more about this, or you want to jump in?
No. Happy to have you do it, Jim.
Okay, okay, so it's still a little bit, I'm afraid if I make it smaller, it'll be too hard to see, but I will make it smaller just for a second. And for the folks online, the link in the chat is the link to the PDF of the Excel version that we're looking at right now. These columns that are in kind of the salmon-y color, that's the information that was presented to the commission back in May. And for those of you who were at that meeting, you might remember there was so much uncertainty. we didn't have our formula allocation. We didn't have the competitive results. We didn't know whether or not AmeriCorps was even going to let us, as a state commission, let the commission refund the programs that had been terminated. We just didn't know a bunch. So what the commission voted on, instead of specific funding levels, although there are numbers in this chart, what the commission voted to approve was a funding strategy that prioritized funding existing subrecipients. And again, that includes even those that were terminated because we were told that we could bring them back. Prioritizing funding existing subrecipients to the best of the ability that we could with the amount of funds that we ended up having. So, but what was proposed back in May at the time, based on, we thought that all of those competitive applications, all 12 of those that were on the previous chart, we weren't sure. We thought that maybe all of those would have to go into the formula. And so they're all listed on this chart. But that meant that there was going to be a 36.5% reduction across the board just to be able to maintain programs. And so that's what was presented back in May. So the formula submission deadline was June 13th. Right before that deadline, we got the formula allocation. But we still did not have the competitive results. No, I'm sorry. Let me check the.
I think that's right. I think that's.
Can I borrow one of your talking points? Sorry, I need the talking points. Yeah. So I want to make sure I give you the dates right. Yeah, so we received the formula allocation on May the 22nd, which was after the May 2nd meeting. But we didn't get the competitive announcement until after the deadline to submit the formula. So we knew how much formula money we had. We just didn't know which of those programs that were on that other chart were going to get competitive funding. So staff took the formula that we knew we had, including the carryover of the 640,000. At the time, we didn't include the million, and I'll talk about that in a second. And that meant that there were still going to be across the board cuts. But when we went to programs and said, here's what we can fund you at, given our current understanding of how much money we have, a couple programs, in addition to the Martha O'Brien Center, decided not to continue. And so at that time, City of Memphis, Martha O'Brien, as I mentioned, and actually Tennessee's Community Assistance Corporation all said that they were going to close their doors. That was bad news, but it did free up funds to be able to provide funding for the remaining programs with only an additional almost 6% cut from what was approved in May. So still cuts, but not as bad. So that's what got submitted June 13th. After June 13th, we got the competitive results. Tennessee's Community Assistance Corporation decided that they would take the competitive funding rather than close their doors. So they're now in the competitive portfolio. So we don't have to worry about them in formula. So what actually then we did after we got the competitive is what's in this last set of columns here. So the three that either are closing their doors or were funded competitively are at the top, and so but we don't need to worry about them in this chart. But essentially it meant that we could fully fund every program at what they originally requested or their budget that they submitted back in June. So everybody got what they want, what they requested. with the exception again of Memphis Teacher Residency. They're on both charts because, again, we're trying to figure out a way to get formula money to them. But it's not a straight path, and we haven't figured out yet, and we're waiting for some information from the AmeriCorps agency on how to make it work. We think we can make it work. We just don't know if we can, and if we can, how to do it. But we're trying. So they're actually included on this chart. The couple that are so everything in green is an increase from what was submitted in June. And again, just about everybody is fully funded at what they originally requested at the beginning of the funding cycle. There's an exception to that, which is, sorry, the name is off the side, but it's the Clinch Powell Resource Conservation and Development Council. In June, when we had less money, they decided they were going to focus on a single program component. They previously were doing about 3 different things. And they said, we're just going to focus on one. When we came back to them and offered more money, they said, no, we're just going to stay on this one thing. We're not going to do the other things. We're just going to stay focused on this one thing. So that's why their numbers don't have any shading, is because it's what they wanted in June, but it's what they wanted in August. And so they're where they are. The other ones that are in yellow, those are their requests to either accept. Typically, it was fewer members than what they originally requested in June because of circumstances of all the craziness that's going on. But it's what they requested. It's not, we didn't say you can't have this money, because we actually ended up having a surplus of about $232,000 in formula money that we could have given them more if they wanted it. Now, the other thing about this, and it leads into the discussion earlier about the risk assessments, it did leave enough money to fully fund one of the brand new applicants. The amount that was left over wasn't really enough to fully fund the next one down. And since it's been such a crazy year, the staff recommendation is to not try and give that program partial money, and just because we can use that money later. But it does allow for funding the Chattanooga Chamber Foundation. So that's all the moving around, shifting of funding, and where we ended up. Where we ended up for most of the programs was good because they were fully funded. It was not good in the sense that 2 programs decided to close their doors and not do AmeriCorps anymore. And it's also not good in the sense that Memphis Teacher Residency is still out there hanging, and we don't know when their competitive funding will get approved, if it will get approved at all. So this was the recommendation that that was going to go before you all for a vote today. Any questions about that?
I think I understand why you're having a hard time sleeping.
So Jeff, it's not a situation. They don't, it's just.
No.
Okay.
No. So thank you for bringing that up. One of the challenges for Memphis Teacher Residency is these are grant numbers. The 23 AFH and 22 FXH are just grant numbers, and the formula money gets dispersed into different federal grants because we have cost reimbursement and fixed amount grants, and I'm not going to go into that, but they require different grant numbers. The 22 FXH actually expires at the end of this month. We requested a no-cost extension about 2 months ago, and it hasn't been awarded yet. There's money left in that grant, and it's actually more than $1 million, but $1 million is what Memphis Teacher Residency requested. If we can get that no-cost extension, we can potentially then put Memphis Teacher Residency under that grant and use that leftover money to fully fund them. But the no-cost extension has to be done first, and then we would have to move them over to that grant. If we can't use that $1 million, then we've talked with Memphis Teacher Residency about this, and they would like us to, at the same time, and we're pursuing these in parallel tracks, take this leftover 232,000 and at least give them that. So that's what we're working on right now internally with staff, is trying to figure out those two options, but while not yet giving up on the competitive funding until we absolutely have to. Because at some point, we'll have to say, we're gonna have to submit the grant on the electronic system, and then that will cause an award to be issued. And you can't get money from the competitive and the formula for the same program. So they have to be in one or the other. They can't be in both.
And that's what will keep them from getting the amount of money that you all are proposing to allocate to Chattanooga Chamber Foundation.
No. That wouldn't take any money away from any of these programs that are currently on the chart.
Oh, I'm sorry. So let me re-say this. So we're proposing that we would give money to Chattanooga Chamber Foundation. The money that we're proposing to give to them, could it be an option to give to Memphis Teacher Residency instead?
It could, it still would only be about half of what they requested.
Oh, I hear
Yeah, I
you,
mean,
but I think half is better than none if we come down to the, right? That's what I'm asking, like. Can you tell me what that wasn't considered or what that thought process was? That wasn't in the room. I'm sure
Well,
we have-
yeah, well, because we didn't get the competitive announcement until after we had already
Yeah.
submitted the stuff in June, and we got the competitive announcement and we thought that they were going to get competitive funding. And because we thought they were going to get competitive funding, we then staff out again based on,
And we have already allocated that money. to
we've already allocated, we've already got the contract signed with them and in place. So it was, by the time we figured out that the competitive money wasn't being released,
I got it.
it was too late to.
I just didn't compute
Yeah.
that we had already given it to Chattanooga. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and again, it was, there was so much stuff happening, so many different things coming at us all at once. But we were trying to make sure, again, one was to do our best to implement the commission's vote in May to preserve existing programs. And we were able to do that, we thought, based on what we knew at the time, which again, essentially everybody got what they wanted.
No, that makes sense. I wasn't at the May meeting, so.
Yeah. So technically, it's probably not too late. We could potentially cancel that contract with Chattanooga Chamber Foundation, but I think ethically, it would not be a good thing
Yeah,
to
you've
do.
already told me. So, yeah, I thought they didn't even know. I thought we were saying like, oh, we could do.
Oh, yeah, no. Well, we had to initiate all this fairly quickly because the program start date was August 1st, right? And we were already into July when we were trying to get all this straightened out. And so they had to, we had to get them to get their application ready to go. And we had to do contracts on kind of a compressed time frame. So, yeah.
What are we voting? All this is done.
Well, what the commission would be voting on would be to approve what the staff did based on the directions from the May meeting.
And if I could maybe clarify, I don't know if it's the last meeting or the one before, but there was a proposal that after we talked about it, we adjusted it and did something different than what either the grant committee or someone else recommended, the staff, or something that we tweaked and said, instead of doing it this way, let's do it this way. And
Yes.
so we can look at this and decide, like if that hadn't been given already, or they hadn't been notified, that question could have been, oh, well, let's move this, or can we do this?
And that typically would be what would have been done in May. And that has happened in the past where the grants committee recommends something and the board, during the full commission meeting, someone says, well, what about this? And then the commission says, oh, well, that's a good point. Let's tweak it a little bit. But we just didn't, there was so much unknown in May that it was, you know,
So we could change things.
Even
A
though
little.
contracts have went out.
No,
I guess that's my
no,
question.
well, again, it's, I think technically we could potentially cancel that contract with the Chattanooga Chamber Foundation, but again, I think it's probably would not.
So it's
be
really
effective.
just,
We're just rubber stamping.
pretty much, okay.
Well, I mean, it is.
But if the money had come in, we would have already had the opportunity to discuss it, vote on it and choose.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
this situation.
I get it. So that's why I'm confused of why we still have to vote on it, because it's been done.
Yeah, there's
essentially.
no going back.
Yeah, there's,
But the board
I mean,
has
we
the option to
could.
choose.
we could, but it wouldn't be a good look.
Yeah.
Well, just in general, I prefer that the commission sanction what the staff has done, even though we've done it based on your direction. That's my preference, is that you then ratify what's been done so that there's no question that the commission is okay with the staff, with what the staff have done. And if you tell me to go back and cancel this contract, we'll find a way to do it. But you can't because there's not enough people.
Then by the time we get it, it'll really be too late. Yeah.
And you don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, I think ethically it would not be a good thing to do, to try to cancel that
Not
contract.
right now. I'm with the area that we're at right now. That would be my opinion.
So there's one thing I was gonna say, we didn't look at the timeline.
Yeah, we haven't, any questions about this? If not, I'll see if I can figure out how to show the timeline. Let's see. Forget where it is. Oh, it's the last thing. So the last thing that was to be voted on today is approval of the next funding process timeline, which also has question marks. You know, we don't know what the total federal money is going to be. Last year it was about 444 million. Again, we don't know what the status of Memphis teacher residency is going to be. We don't know what the next year's formula allocation is going to be. 3.8 is what it was for the current year. But in general, this document sets out which programs the commission wants to send to the competitive process. And that's all this stuff up here. And I'm not going to read all of it, but essentially the two programs that were on the chart that have their money, City Year and Tennessee's Community Assistance Corporation, they actually are they're in their third year. And so they'll have to recompete in the next funding process, and staff recommend that they do that. We've got one program that's an existing formula program that will be in its third year. And so it has to recompete anyway. And that's when we typically send programs to the national competitive process when they're at the end of their 3-year formula grant. All the other programs would be continuation formula. Again, with the exception of Memphis teacher residency, we don't know what status they're going to be in. But they'll either be a competitive continuation or a formula continuation if we can get the money to them. And then the timeline was based on last year's dates. And last year we received the federal notice of funding opportunity on August the 6th. We didn't receive it on the 6th. And as far as I know, we haven't received it yet today. But as long as we receive that notice of funding opportunity and application instructions within the next couple weeks, we could still publish the Tennessee notice on September 11th and then maintain the other dates. But if we don't get it within the next 2 weeks or so, we would need to adjust this and present you with a revised timeline at the November retreat. But anyway, the rest of it is just dates for the various parts of the funding process.
Any comments, questions, concerns?
I would love to just go ahead and see a revised version, just in the climate that we're in right now. Just like even have one prepared, of like, what is that?
Yeah.
And why does that not, I mean, why does it matter? I know why it matters, but why does it matter? Can you more tell us that that's the entire board, so everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, well, so the federal notice of funding opportunity sets out the deadlines for when Tennessee has to submit its competitive applications. And so we don't know what that's gonna be. Last year, it was January 23rd. And so we have to build our state level process based on that due date and work backwards in terms of when is the first draft due? When is the second draft due? When's the final draft due? Works backwards from that date. But we don't know what that is yet. And without the notice, it would just be a complete guess. But our guess is it's probably going to be close to what it was last year, their date. We just don't know when we're going to get the notice. And then the same with the formula process. We work backwards from, let's see, the package forwarded. This year, it was due June 13th. But we didn't know what the due date was when we did last year's timeline. We just figured it was going to be sometime May or June. So, and the same thing, we work backwards from when we have to submit the formula application, our portfolio, and we work backwards from there to include the deadlines for the formula submission, the review process, all of that stuff. Time for the commission to vote on it, all gets included in there. So we could draft up an alternate version, but without knowing those due dates, it would be pretty hard to.
What I'm hearing is the timeline does not only impact staff, it impacts the board, who have to vote on it, and the grantees, because they need to know when to get their documents in as well.
Yeah. And again, as long as we get that notice and the application instructions within the next couple of weeks, we can still maintain this timeline. Particularly with, releasing the Tennessee notice on September 11th. But really, the first deadline for applicant, based on last year's dates, was around late October, October 23rd-ish was when the first draft of the competitive applications were due to Volunteer Tennessee. And then staff review them, provide feedback. They make changes, we review them again, because again, we can do that for the competitive process because that decision is made by the AmeriCorps agency. We can't provide that kind of feedback to a formula applicant and say, here's how you can improve your application, because that would be unfair. But since this body isn't making that competitive decision, we can give them feedback, and we actually give them a couple rounds of feedback to try and make their applications to the national process as strong as possible.
In the likelihood or answers, sorry if you want me to go with it. 10/23 can't, it's not gonna mess up the grantee in a way of like, oh, it's normally October 23rd, we're gonna tell you to put it in September. Right, like it would just be in the betterment, the timeline adjustment would be for the good of the grantee in a way. It wouldn't take, like, make them have to turn something in.
Well,
I guess what I'm saying is, if we went forward this timeline, we promoted it, that's what we're gonna do, we published that.
Well, I don't know, because last year that January 23rd due date, when Tennessee had to submit to the competitive, that was later than it was the year before.
Okay.
The year before it was in February.
Okay.
And so all of this stuff in the previous year had to be earlier. So if they moved their deadline earlier, all of this stuff will then also have to be earlier.
Okay, I was just hoping that they would put later than you're put down.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe one thing in life, we all work together and help stay.
Yeah. I don't think,
Dream, we can dream.
Yes.
I don't think it'll get later because the field, the state commissions have practically begged them for years to move that date back, because last year it was due January, not last year, but the year before it was due January the 2nd. Wow. Yeah, no, it's not good. So I doubt it'll get moved much further back. It could potentially get moved earlier, but given kind of the uncertainty within the AmeriCorps agency itself, I
Never.
doubt that they'll want to make it earlier.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Both, thank you. Did we get any requests for public comment? No requests. All right. Are there any questions, concerns, thoughts before we move to our last item on the agenda? Just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Please remember and mark your calendars for November 6th and 7th. We have a fabulous retreat. More details to come. And I want to call on Jim to finish with our evaluations travel forms.
Sure. And I'll send out the evaluation link to everybody as follow-up. But the QR code is on the screen if you want to scan it and do it right now. I will also send out an electronic copy of the travel form, but you have a hard copy in front of you. So the key thing, if you want to do it right now, the key thing is that you fill in, you'll do two lines. I don't think anybody came in and stayed overnight. So you'll do one for this morning when you came in to this building. And so, but both lines will have the same date. It'll be today's date. It'll just be the time you left, wherever it was you left to come here, and that you arrived here. Then the next line will be leaving here and going back to wherever you're going from. Don't worry about putting in the mile. We'll calculate the miles for you. But put that where you came from, arrive here, or leaving here, arriving, going wherever you're going. Below that, if you'll put in your name, the last four of your social, not the entire thing, and your mailing address, then if you will sign and date it, and that's it. If you're going to do it right now, you can do all those things. I'll send you an electronic version. You'll need to do the same things for the electronic version, but you can do that at your leisure.
Donation.
Oh, yeah. And if anybody wants to donate their travel rather than get reimbursed for it, do the same thing. But underneath where it says Volunteer Tennessee Commission meeting, you just write in-kind donation. We'll calculate the value of that, and then it can count towards your giving, in terms of when we're looking at the commissioner give to Volunteer Tennessee or the Friends of Volunteer Tennessee, that'll count.
Along that line, we're really asking that every commissioner try to give something to Volunteer Tennessee. So this is kind of an easy way to do it.
Yes. Okay, I want to thank you all again. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your input online as well. Thank you for giving us your time today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second, we do not have to vote. Thank you all.
Who made the second? Mr. Huggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone online.
So where's our place arrive? What should we put for our place
Thanks so
arrive?
much.
Thank you. You can put 220.
Free planning drive. 220 free planning drive.
I know it's on my. Thank you, Terry. Okay.
I guess we'll decide on the time.
I'll send something out to the exec.
It's good.
It's not a simple.
Nice trying again. May I have it?
Yeah.
Well,
No, I got you. I don't want to go on trip, that's why.
Yes, agreed.
thanks, Terry.
Watch back. Very well.
I don't think you can.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Of course.
Hopefully the barbecue tofu
It
wasn't
was
too
good.
bad.
And you were right. I was surprised.
I like it. It's really good.
I don't know. I'm all about it all.
I'm sick.
Thank you so much.
And I get it, and we met already. You're all right.
It was. We danced on the
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be. Say.
So much.
I am.
Yeah, me too.